Today, Latinitas is honored to be sitting down with Hector Gonzales and Santiago Suarez Ruiz of Rooster Teeth's Gallos Unidos, an initiative started in 2021 over at Rooster Teeth to highlight and uplift the Latino community. On top of all the good they did, Gallos Unidos also became great supporters of Latinitas, even inviting us to their Hispanic Heritage Month live stream and donating a portion of their merch to profiting us. While there's a lot to talk about with everything I just mentioned, I just wanted to start off with, how are you guys doing with everything that has happened?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm awake.
Yeah. Well, I guess obviously, so the elephant in the room obviously is Rooster Teeth is shutting down after 21 years.
Yep.
We were acquired through a bunch of series of acquisitions by Warner Media or Warner Discovery, and they have decided to shut us down. So that's not unknown at this point, I think. But I think everybody at work in that boat is just trying to like figure out what comes next. I think a lot of us were taken care of by Warner with like we have some severance and we have some time, and it wasn't an immediate shutdown. We were given 60 days to be able to start working and looking and winding down projects. Like Santiago is the lead of a group.
Yeah, I manage a group of young creators called Best Friends Today, and they're currently looking for a new home, right? Either independent or third party acquisition, but they're really excited. It'd be a shame to lose all that momentum after building a for a year.
But we were all given enough time to like wind it down, or like they have the time to look, and so it's not like an immediate, like it was very much like kind of a gut punch for all the stuff that we've done, but it wasn't like get out of the door, right?
Right. Well, at least because we've seen that happen with other people in the YouTube space. So I'm curious. So was that something you started with Rooster Teeth, or was that a separate thing?
Started with Rooster Teeth. It was about it was about a year. Well, they allowed me to have the resources to do that, but me, my manager Juwan, and the talent director Ida, we spent about a year looking for new talent, like TikTok, Instagram, new up and coming creators that would work together, and we narrowed the list to about like 50 people. And we met with every single one of them, and then we flew out about 10 of them to LA just to like meet and see like who has synergy. And we narrowed down to the three, Will, Sammy, and Caroline, and then just instant like chemistry in the room, right? So we're like, we need to get these guys out to Austin. We moved them out last year around like April to June, like they all came staggered. Wow. And then we launched in August of last year, and then the past like 6-7 months, we gotten like over 53 million views on TikTok, like 50 million views on Instagram, and like almost 100,000 people following us on YouTube. So
they're very funny. They are very, very funny, the three of them, and they're really, it's a diverse group, and they're just really good kids. I say kids not to like just condescending. They're 20. They're like between 20 and 23.
Oh,
like,
so they're young.
They're very young.
Yeah,
and especially at Rooster Teeth, they're the youngest ones.
Yeah.
In the room.
Oh, yeah.
So and then I say that endearingly when I say kids, but they're great. They're really, really good people.
So you guys were saying you had like time to figure this out, and with stuff like that, this was maybe going to come towards the end, but now I'm curious what is going to happen with things like that.
So again, like Warner Bros. Has given us the opportunity, like the 60 days. They're also given us a lot of resources. I know on their end, they have executive lawyers and people parsing out through, the value of the company, because they don't want to devalue what we built. They also don't want to be like, hey, anybody can come buy this, because then we might end up in a home where it's like, it might not fit for us. The expertise that they're trying to ensure that this continues has gotten a lot of respect from me, because it's like, I want them to succeed, even if it means I don't come with, even if it's like a third party coming and coming like, hey, we love the talent, but we can't afford everybody. The fact that they're even taking the time while they're shutting everything down speaks volumes for their dedication. Like they see value in it, and they don't want to screw with anybody or make sure that anybody is left without a job, like at the end of it. And yeah, it's been like 4 weeks now that we've been working together, and then hopefully here in like next 2 weeks we'll find final answers or solutions. And at the end of the day, they're like, hey, worst comes to worst, we are open in communication with you guys to acquire the name yourself so you can continue it and sell it and keep shopping it around. So that's, you can't ask for anything else in that. Yeah. In the industry, right?
And I would say that I've been telling people this, that it's really, really interesting. Like if job security wasn't a thing, right? Because it is a thing. This would be fascinating to watch on the outside, because I've never been a part of something that's like this, like a relatively successful entertainment company, that's production company that's really well known.
Yeah.
And seen what it's like for all of it to kind of like go away, but like from a business aspect, like what do you do with brands? How do you do, how do you sell off IP? How do you decide what is monetized, what's not? Like, what we do with our physical location, which is a big space over at the Austin studio, is like all of these things are interesting to hear and to be in the conversations about. I'm just a part of it that's affected by it, right?
I
but
mean,
like, but it is very interesting to kind of like see how the decisions are made.
I love that you mentioned Austin too, because Rooster Teeth is such a staple in Austin in a lot of ways in my mind, and maybe this is only in my mind, but we've seen this like Hollywood jumping to Austin. And I think so much of that is South by and like festivals, but a lot of it is Rooster Teeth having presence and being successful here also.
Yeah.
So that's crazy to see that to see what's going to happen with that.
Rooster Teeth has been in Austin as long as I have, which is about, I got here in 2002 and the company started in 2003. I got here to go to UT film school, and it's always kind of been in the background, kind of like rising and falling and doing all that stuff. And I was able to get over there around 6 years ago. And so, yeah, it's a huge part of that. It's a part of it that's been great for the community, but you know, it's ending, and there's cycles, and who knows what the next thing will be. And you know, I think it's important that a lot of the people that were successful and helped push the place forward, I know are staying in Austin, at least for the time being. So who knows what'll be the next part of that, you know?
Yeah. So let's take it back for a moment and introduce you guys a bit more. So how did you both get involved with Rooster Teeth?
You go first.
Okay.
You have to talk.
I'm Hector Gonzales. I went to film school in 2002. I graduated in 2006, and then I started working at UT from 2007 to 2013.
Right away.
Yeah, and then 2013, I went to a company called Megalomedia, which does like 600 Pound Life and a bunch of other reality TV. And then in 2018, I went to Rooster Teeth, and during all that time, I also went back to grad school in 2013 and got my master's in film studies. And on top of that, I started randomly taking martial arts when I graduated undergrad, and I did really well at that. I got a couple of black belts, but that also led to me doing fight choreography and stunt choreography around town for films, and a lot of films at UT, and a lot of friends that would go on to do things both independently and whatever. And so a lot of that kind of coalesced at Rooster Teeth. I ended up doing like stunt and safety things. I did the equipment was my main job, which I had sustained through that whole time. And then I randomly became a producer. And Gallos Unidos was a big part of that, because we led a lot of initiatives that had just kind of started from the ground up. And a lot of it was us saying, like, how do you do that? And I had a knowledge of how I would produce things leading a department as a department head in stunts and film. So I kind of applied that to, you know, who do I call for this? Who do I go to find the answers for that kind of a thing. And so that's kind of how I ended up doing Gallos Unidos, or how I got to Gallos Unidos from there.
Yeah, whoa. Yeah. And what about you?
Oh, man, I took a different route. I moved to Austin around 2017, right out of college. No job, just like a couple $1,000s in my pocket. I was like, let's just move to Austin. It's halfway through California, so we can move back home. And then I got hired around 2018, I believe it was June, in animation. So I started out as a coordinator on Genlock, and about a month in, my producer had a baby. So they're like, now you're in charge.
Oh my God.
So immediately I got thrown in, and, you know, after a couple months of hard work, we launched a show. It was like the first show I worked in. It had huge talent. I think that's very lucky. We got Maisie Williams,
Michael B. Jordan,
David Tennant. So I was like, wow, I got to work on a property with these huge talents. Yeah. And from there, they were so impressed with the work that I did for pre-production. They're like, hey, can you help us out in post-production? And from there, they're like, hey, can you help us out with talent and supervising and scripts? And I'm like, so yeah, I can help out with that. And I got introduced to a lot of new talents, a lot of voice acting. And from there, they're like, wow, we really want you to continue at this company. Unfortunately, your contract's up. Would you like to transition over to executive route as an EA, as an executive assistant? I'm like, sure. And that's Jordan Levin, our current general manager. He just got hired from Warner Brothers. He's the youngest Warner Brother exec. I think he was the head of the
CW back in the day.
Oh
back in the day.
Like Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, he's worked
Smallville. Like he helped create all those shows. Yeah,
he greenlit Golden Girls. Like he's been around.
Wait. I thought, hold up.
Yeah, he's been around.
He's a really impressive person. Yeah,
that's crazy. What?
Yeah,
tell him thank you.
Definitely. But as an EA, the pandemic was happening. George Floyd stuff was happening.
Right.
And Rooster Teeth kind of it was Jordan who had the initiative. It was like, I want to open up the floor. Like, this is affecting everybody. We're nowhere near each other. We're all at home. I just want to talk and discuss, like, how is everybody feeling affected?
Oh, wow.
And that's where a couple voices kind of spoke up. One of them being Hector, like, basically saying everything that I felt at that time. And from there, we had like the first version of DEI committee kind of coming in and talking about everybody's kind of like perspective.
Yeah.
And that was V1. And then V2 was Gallos Unidos. And when that came along, I think Jordan and my supervisor at the time, Steph, both put my name in as well. They're like, hey, I think you would be a good fit. And then, me and Hector was kind of like, we didn't coordinate together. We're just kind of, hey, you're also in content. And I
you're
think
also Latino.
You're also Latino.
Well, we had like co-leads both the first year and the second year because we were able to do it for 3 years before this shutdown. And the first year, our co-lead wasn't able to continue. And the second year, Sage Basan Juarez from the Valley, she was amazing. Mission, Texas, shout out to her. Shout out to Andrew, whatever she said on the live stream. But she was great, but she also, she was younger, so her career moved her on and she had moved away. So then in year 3, it was just the two of us. But going back to that, the beginning of it was really born out of the George Floyd thing, like he had said.
Right.
At the time, a lot of companies were paying a lot of lip service to the idea of DEI, right?
Yep.
But Jordan really, really, really put his money where his mouth was because he basically, like Santiago said, he literally had town halls, and this was during the pandemic, so everybody was at home. And I remember the first town hall was just, he basically said, here's a sign-up sheet, put your name, and we'll go in order, and just literally whatever you want to talk about. And I think I might have been the second or third person to talk, but it was literally just people talking about what it's like being whatever minority they were, whatever their differences were, whatever it is, and like how painful, how honest, all these. And so everybody in this call, and I remember the first one was scheduled for like an hour, and I think it went for like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And he, as the GM, just sat there, and he'll joke about it that he's an older white Jewish guy, and he just sat there and he led the whole thing, and he was just listened. And it was amazing, and I have a massive amount of respect for Jordan. And so that led to the first version of the DEI group, where there was a bunch of different groups where we tried to figure out how could we do something. And it didn't really work because it was kind of like the first version where you're like, hey, I think I want to do something different, but you don't have a plan in place, right?
Right.
But the important thing is that Jordan and the other executive team, they took all that information, and they were like, okay, so let's go back to Warner, and let's go back and let's talk and let's come up with a plan. And about, maybe 3 or 4 months later, we were asked, hey, your name came up. Would you want to lead this? And I think we were both unanimous, like, yeah, I would like to be a part of this. And we had to get vetted. We had to get do you have the time for this? Are you in good standing with your departments? All that other stuff. And then we were allowed to. And again, at a time, my wife was working in a different company, and they had a DEI initiative, and I remember her telling me that they weren't really allowed to do much. And it was like, the idea was there, and it was a nice idea, but at the end of the day, all of those people were reporting to the general norm, like cis white male older people. Yeah. And we were like, Jordan was like, I'm hands off now. And he was like, you have the resources. HR is leading this. And a wonderful woman named Vina Ortiz was our HR lead. She was great. She supported us through all of it. But they kind of really did leave every group. So there was Gallos Unidos, Black Excellence, Iridescence, which is the LGBTQIA plus group. There was Disabilities, which is their name, which is everybody with special disabilities, both indivisible and physically presenting. And then there was WART, which is Women at Rooster Teeth. Mm-hmm. And I think and then is that all of us? Art, Asians at Rooster Teeth.
Wow.
So every group, those were to lead with. And every group for those first couple of years got $10,000 to do whatever you wanted with.
Wow.
So that's why we were able to kind of support y'all and do a lot of things with y'all. And anybody around if you went to a Gallos Unidos thing or you saw our thing somewhere or our merch lines, all of that was because we were given that budget. But not just that, they left us alone. They were like, you do what you want. And not every group did as much as we wanted to. But me and Santiago, we really knew from the beginning that there were things that we knew we wanted to do. And it wasn't a selfish thing. I never looked at it as a selfish thing, like, oh, I want to have a live stream. I want to put us in front of the camera. I just felt in my heart that, like, we're not going to see change unless we're making that change, right? So I used the Pride initiative at Rooster Teeth. Every year they made a big Pride clothing line, and it benefited Out Youth, which was amazing. They've done so much great stuff there. But I would look around and I would see how important Pride was, not just to Rooster Teeth, but to a lot of businesses. And I remember telling him and talking about it, and I was like, I don't think anybody's going to pay attention to the diversity that we're trying to bring about unless we're making somebody say, oh, there's a bottom line that we can benefit off of. And that's not to be cynical. That's being realistic and honest, right? Like, companies will pay more attention if they're like, oh, there's a market for that. So when we came up with a merch line, and when we were like, we're going to do a live stream, we didn't know how to do those things. We figured all of that out on our own, but we did know that it was important that we did them because not only was it something that could maybe show companies that they could do these things, but at the end of the day, I would always argue that, like, growing up Hispanic, I didn't have a lot of people that I could look at in the industry and say, like, look at them. But I was always like, if we can make one kid just, like, show up to one thing and say, like, look, they're doing it, that's, I think, was just as important as being able to support groups or make companies pay attention. So that's what we were kind of like, that's kind of like how Gallos Unidos was, like, started and what we were able to do.
You said so much good information right there.
Sorry. It's a lot, yeah.
Okay, so I love that that what you were saying about your wife having a different perspective is very real from my experience. It's mainly like, we have a lunch. Yeah. We do our little lunch thing with our diverse group. I mean, honestly, that's phenomenal that they funded different things. And also, it's funny in my head to kind of check off the groups I would be in. It's like 4 groups there, but, go off. That's just crazy. That's so incredible that they did that. I also want to know, what was you guys' perspective on growing up Latino, maybe before joining Rooster Teeth? Mm-hmm. Because just personally, it was something I really didn't think about until joining Latinitas. It was something, I'm Puerto Rican, both my parents are Puerto Rican, but I don't speak Spanish, and I understand it pretty well, but I was never, like, Latino enough to hang out with Latino kids. So it was always just like, that's who I am. I'm Puerto Rican, but I look white. Like, it was always like what I said. Yeah. And it's just a different thing when you're, like, put in a position where you actually get to empower and get to bring that community, uplift that community and work on that. It's a very special thing. So I want to know how that was growing up here.
I think I have a very similar perspective where I really didn't think about it until Rooster Teeth. And it was because I was born in Colombia. I lived there until I was like 8. Then I moved to Miami, where, again, the population there is a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of Cubans. Yeah. But to somebody who didn't even speak English at the time, I was Mexican to everybody. It's like, oh, you speak Spanish, you must be Mexican. I'm like, no, I'm Colombian. So it was that initial feeling of, like, immediately I had to lose my identity because there wasn't a Colombian community that I could look to other than my family. Yeah. But then the Latin community there embraced everything. Like, oh, you speak Spanish, you're part of us, right? When I went to school, it's like you hang out with the people that speak Spanish. Doesn't matter where you came from. We're all Latinos. And I took that with me when I moved to, like, Virginia, because I was a Navy brat. So it's like, up and down the East Coast. And, I became the darkest kid in Virginia or the darkest kid in North Carolina, right? And the only person speaks Spanish. So when I moved to Texas, I already had this mentality. I was like, I know my identity. I know I'm Colombian, but people are going to perceive me a certain way just based on my name, which was a huge thing when I first moved here, right? Just even putting my name down, they're like, oh, you must be Mexican. You're Santiago, right? Like the little Latin name. I'm like, no, I'm Colombian. And it's like kind of felt like I had to educate people, because I would be silenced and then just kind of put in a box and, like, forgotten about. So coming into Rooster Teeth, when all these initiatives came up, I felt that it's like, oh, there's a great opportunity to educate, because even to this day, it's hard to differentiate, right? And I feel like this is my own personal opinion, the Asian community kind of went through this where it's like, hey, everybody's Asian. But now we're so educated where everybody's from. Yeah. And we can tell the differences just based on dialect, even the way that they dress or some of the customs.
Or just watching shows, you see the subtitles. Exactly. That's Korean, that's Japanese.
I want that for the Latino community. I feel like that is the next step for us, where it's like, oh, you're not just all Latino, Hispanic, you're Colombian, you're Puerto Rican, you're Honduran, and just finding those differences, because we come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. But we're at the early stages of colorism and understanding that. So I'm glad that I'm part of the beginning of a movement that I think it's going to, spread over the next couple of years.
I think so. I think we're getting there, because I remember growing up in Houston, I was like the first Puerto Rican almost any of those kids met. And I had that conversation so many times, like, oh, so you're Mexican. You're Mexican, right? And it's like, no, but you don't understand. And then it's like, so it's part of the US, but it was just like it's very frustrating. I think understanding that we are not a monolith, that we are so diverse and so different in our traditions and the way we talk and the like literal slang and just everything is so imperative. And the fact that you guys come from different backgrounds, the fact that you guys talk about it, it's just like, it's there. We're there. We're so close.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it was really important to us, because we got a lot of it, an earful of it. Like the name Gallos Unidos.
Oh.
What do you mean?
Well, every part of it was an education, right? So like originally Gallos, Rooster, right? They wanted us to be called Los Gallos. And I remember somebody from the LGBTQ community in our group was like, I don't like that, because I'm also Hispanic. And Los Gallos means,
like the gendered of it?
Mm-hmm. And they were, and the irony was, she was absolutely right. But obviously, it's a gendered language, right? So like Los Gallos was probably not going to fly, so we had to think about it and be like, okay, well, what about Gallos Unidos? And that really got traction, and I think we really liked it. But then, our looking in the like Gallos Unidos and every one of the BRGs served multiple functions at Rooster Teeth, including outside and internal. So internally being like, what resources do we want? What do we want to commit to? How do we want to lift up our people here? And part of the ways we did that was hosting get-togethers and trying to find people who were not on camera talent to be on camera from time to time on our live streams or whatever, so people could see the differences. But the truth and the reality of it is there was not a lot of people who outside of like, we had a couple of like Santiago from Colombia, we had a couple of people from the Dominican Republic, we had somebody from Bolivia, and a lot of Latinos, and that's it. And I remember our first year on our stream, and we got a lot of feedback that was like, where's Afro-Latino representation?
Yeah.
Where is, like across the pond in Europe and Spanish representation? And people would not be shy about letting us know that in comments, even if it was like, hey.
That's so much pressure.
Even if it was like, hey, we're celebrating all of the diversity for Hispanic or Latinos at Rooster Teeth. Here's a picture of everybody that we could find. And one of the things we did was like, everybody that we could find, and then we put a flag where their mother country was from, so everybody could see they're not. And in the comment section, it's people like, "Why you're not doing enough?" And so it was so like hard. It's very hard.
It's
and
also we're everywhere.
Yeah,
it's so many countries. It's not going to be everywhere.
And the truth, and I remember I got in that comment section. I was like, "You're right. That's what we're trying to change, because this is literally who works here. We're missing people.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But we're trying. We're trying. And the only thing I can say for we're trying is like, if we weren't trying, nobody would be trying here. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, we tried. I mean, we even met with UT professors to talk about Latinx and Latine. Because that was like
the debate. My God,
the big debate. Where
how do you guys feel about it?
Well,
it's such a heavy question now.
I think we both came from different perspectives, but ended up in the same place after talking to
Charles
and Mary.
Mary Elizabeth Beltran at ET and Charles Ramirez-Berg at ET.
Whereas a Colombian myself, it's like, well, you're just trying to change your language. Like, it's like, I also spoke a little bit of German at times. Like, they have 3 genders. Like, they have non-gender, like das, and then male and female for all their words. So it's like even harder to track. But after talking to Mary and like the cycle of like, well, the name kind of changes every couple of years, right? Latinos 1 year, Hispanics the other, Chicanos and stuff like that. But when the case was made, it was like, hey, this might not be meant for wider kind of like, hey, all of you are Latinx or Latine, but the people who identify as non-binary or people that kind of have a hard time kind of figuring out what they want to be called, this is just another option. And when I saw it as an option rather than the default, I was like very accepting to it. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So every single time we spoke or made any kind of internal message or external messages, Latina, Latino, and Latinx, like everybody's included, not just one.
That's really nice.
Yeah, the AOX was a big thing, and part of that also, my perspective was like, I have my nieces and my nephews, and I'm like, they're of a generation that's growing up that's probably going to be a lot more educated than my parents were. Not even obviously where we come from, but like, how do you deal with non-binary identification? How do you deal with people who identify these different things? And they're probably going to have a lot more of a diverse education in that department, right? And so I remember thinking, I remember I asked Charles this, I was like, am I the old man yelling at clouds if I'm like, Latinx is not a thing, we don't have that, right? But if it's something that, for better or worse, like the press and the general public who controls things uses that word, and my nephews and my nieces grow up with it, should I not learn to like embrace it to the extent that it's useful? And Charles was like, he was like, again, every 20 years they're going to call us something different. So sure, yes and no, but the answer lies somewhere in between. And I think that's something that, again, we were both very negative about it. And I think we've been, it's useful when it's useful, and we'll deal with that. It's the same thing with like Hispanic Heritage Month and Latin Heritage Month. Mm-hmm. Like we're trying to when we tried to like say that, right? Because Hispanic and Latin have different things, but for the U.S. they say Hispanic Heritage Month, and we know that Latin is more inclusive. So when we were coming up with our plans that first year for what we were going to do for Hispanic Heritage Month, we tried really hard to use the verbiage of Latin Heritage Month, and it just never took off because everywhere else in the country that you looked uses the phrase Hispanic Heritage Month, and so it's almost like
it's so hard.
It's trying to like pick and choose your battles for what you can accomplish.
It just, in my mind, I'm always just like, I mean everyone. We mean everyone, no matter whether it's whatever you're saying. It's like, I personally never had I just started seeing that, and I was like, oh, is that good? Cool. Yeah. I don't know. I was like, I'm Latina, but I could be Latinx. I don't know. Yeah. And then there was so much discourse, and I was like, or not. Okay. Yeah. Like, that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, I'm wherever people want to feel. Like, every feeling is valid. So it's like, whatever makes you feel more seen, because I personally... it just is what it is to me. I'm happy to be thought of as Latina even. So I'm like, okay. But no, I appreciate that. It's so hard. People don't understand how hard it is when you have like a company or a business or anything, even just a nonprofit, and you're putting out a statement to try and be inclusive, because you are trying to be as inclusive as possible. And then there will always be people that are like, but what about me? And what about this? Yeah. And it's like, I'm trying, but it just wasn't as catchy. Yeah. Like
we tried where we could, as much as we could. So if nothing else, I think we can look at each other at the end of this 3 years. And, there was always for Gallos Unidos and for all the BRGs, the idea was eventually you would find your replacement so that the energy would be fresh and it wouldn't be stale.
Interesting.
We just got to the part where we were shut down, right?
It didn't work.
So for all intents and purposes, we're going to be the leaders of Gallos Unidos. And I think we're really proud of the fact that we can look at each other, and I know we worked our asses off, and I know we worked really hard, and I think we did everything we possibly could to showcase faces that were brown and everything we could, and to do everything we could to try to include as many people as we could along the way when we had the option.
I think the biggest thing that affirms that at work is I sit in a room and I look around, and I'm like, wow, are we so diverse? Because now we have Justin and we have Juan, Diamond, Sammy and Will. Like, I think when I do Best Friends Today and I sit down for all my meetings, I'm just amazed. It's like there's a lot of representation here, and this is coming from the same company. When I sat down, it's like I'm the darkest one in the room, right? And that's less than 5 years of a change.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite thing you guys got to do with Gallos Unidos?
I know which one's mine.
What is it?
Armando Moose to Austin.
That's pretty good. I will say, we'll talk about it in a second, but I'll probably say some of the live streams were great. But Armando Moves to Austin it's coming up on our anniversary. Our buddy Armando Torres, who's a comedian. He's a really funny dude. He worked at the LA branch called Funhouse out there, and he decided to move on his own because he was just in Austin. Like, he even made it part of his video. He made it like he was here for like 6 weeks in a row without and he lived in LA, but he was here and when I say that, I mean he was taking flights back and forth like every 2 or 3 days because he was just showing up on someone's stuff here at the Rooster Teeth proper. So he decided to move and try it down here. And it started as a joke, which I really didn't think was going to happen. Like, this dude just, I don't know, he has like some dirt on some people or something because you don't get a show made like that because you have to submit an approval and process. And he got it made like that. Like, he had us in a Slack channel and he was like, hey guys, what do you think if we did a road trip where we pick you up, we fly out there, we call it a Gallos Unidos thing, we pick up Armando and we drive down from LA to Austin and we film the whole thing and we'll stop at all these different places and whatever. And I remember telling him, yeah, sure, whatever. Because I know what it takes to get a show made. And I was like, that's not going to happen. Because Armando was moving at the end of April, start of May. And he pitched this at like the end of March. And but by like mid-April, we had like approval to do it. And I was like, I have to start paying attention to this now. Like what? Like,
another thing.
And so, yeah, it was a fun 3-day road trip.
Yeah. That's 3 beautiful big brown boys taken from.
That's how he pitched it in his meeting.
I was in the pitch deck. No, I think I just got lucky because
so cute.
We stopped at the Grand Canyon, right? But like at the very tip, where it's just like a couple feet.
Like that was a joke. Because that's at the border of Arizona and California.
Yeah.
Which is still technically the Grand Canyon, but it's not what you think it is. It's literally a river that's like a part of it. So we would stop there and we'd have a little joke. We stopped in Roswell. We stopped at this ostrich farm. Mm-hmm. We just had all this like really crazy fun and the nice thing was like, here we are again, and we filmed a lot of it, right? And we made the 3 episodes out of it, and I was really proud of it. I really like the last episode. Armando edited everything together, and it was really, really creatively fulfilling and beautiful. And I was really happy to be a part of it. But like, we did get to have conversations on the road where it was like, we're Hispanic and we're doing this. Like, we're all doing this, and it's. The things that we found in common and the things that we did in common and San Antonio, Los Angeles, Colombia, and the things that we could joke about and everything else and what it was like working there and all the crazy stuff that happened in the way. Not crazy, but like goofy stuff. Like we got stopped randomly by Border Patrol outside of White Sands. And this dude was an idiot. He was like, they were doing that thing. We're like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and let you go.
Well, first of all, there was a bunch of bags because you see me. Mm-hmm. Armando's bigger than me in every way, shape, or form. Yeah. He's like, I think he's 6'5".
Yeah.
So we packed a Honda Civic XL to the brim. So I was sitting in the back seat and there's just bags covering me. So when the Border Patrol
trunk.
No, not sus at all.
Yeah. So when the Border Patrol comes to the front and is like, hey, I see you guys are here. And you were like immediately like, here's our badge. Here's our production company.
Here's what we're driving
through. He's like, oh, everything seems in order. And then he kind of looks in the back. He's like, oh, there's another one.
What does Armando say? He said, there's another one of you. Or he said there's a third one. And so he was getting ready. He's like, all right, well, this is the last bit I got to ask y'all just because it's protocol. And he looks at Armando and he goes, what country are you from? And he goes, United States. And he looks at me and I was like, United States. And then he looks at at Santiago, and Santiago goes, United States. And then we were like, shut up. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, all right, get out of here. And we took off. And we didn't get 10 feet down the road for Armando. And we're like, what are you doing? Don't give that man a chance to talk to you anymore. And it just goes to show the difference of growing up at different places. Growing up in Colombia, he was like, what's the big deal? It's a cop. And I was like, whoa. That was very fun. That was interesting. Because again, now here we are talking about our differences and all this, and it was like that is not the normal response for a lot of kids who grew up here to do that, especially if you're of color. And so he was a very naive baby bird about that, and we had to we were just talking the whole way, and that was right before we got to the giant pistachio in Alamogordo, and then we went to Roswell that night. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of interesting stuff.
Which, if you're in Roswell, best Applebee's ever.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it was the only one open till 2 a.m. Only place on the main drive. And it was Friday night, so it's not like it was a Monday. And the only place open that late, because we got in like at 11 o'clock at night. And I remember it was a road trip, right? So Armando goes, I just want to sit down and eat something with a knife and a fork instead of like on the road. So that was the only place that was open. And so we went, and it was surprisingly good. And maybe it was just what we needed at the time, and we had a good time. And it was fun.
That sounds so chaotic. That's crazy.
It was a nightmare. But then we made it, and it was great. And it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm really proud of the thing that we came out, the episodes that came out of it. It was 3 shows, and you can find them on YouTube and RTTV for as long as that exists.
Do you know, is that just going to be up, or it should, right?
I believe, depending on ownership, right? Because everything's a brand, so whoever picks it up.
Yeah.
I think the default is the things that can live on YouTube will stay on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just be monitored here and there.
Yeah.
But I don't think the plan is to take everything down and just kind of hide and bury it. So that.
Yeah. And I think, just to wrap that up, I think my favorite thing was our last live stream. That's the one we got to have Leon.
The mariachis.
The mariachis. It was just, if you look at that last live stream, and probably it'll only matter to us, but if you look at our first live stream, you can tell how much we grew, how much we learned, how successful we became at what we wanted to do with this, because that first one was like at another location, because it was during the pandemic and we didn't have everything set up, and it was very amateur, but we had our hearts out there, and we talked a lot about Latin stuff, and we were able to just do enough. And then the second one was a big improvement. And then the third one, the last one that we did, was just an amazingly large production. And like he said, we had like games, and we had conversations, and we had all these things that were Latin based and Latin leaning and reflective. And we had a lot of fun. And then we ended it with a cook-off between one of his kids, Sammy and Armando. And then we ended it with mariachis, and it was just this big thing, and it was a lot. Like I said, you could see how much we grew, and I was really proud of that. I honestly, I don't want to say it's not a good thing that we're shutting down, but we had no clue what we would have done for another fourth year. We were just like, I don't know what we do now to top that.
Saved you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that it ended on such a high.
It did, yeah.
That and the Spy Kids thing was crazy cool.
Yeah, the Spy Kids thing, we were able to do that. So all of those things are things that we couldn't have done without the money that was given to our group individually.
So impressive and so amazing. Yeah. And like, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like people that watch and absorb and kind of comment like, oh, but what about this? Which is important and super valid, but it's also like, that's not normal. It's not normal to give anyone that platform, especially for Hispanic Heritage Month is something I feel like that only now is like becoming a thing. It really wasn't even a thing.
And I guess if I can add one more, because she's not here anymore, I think Sage would say, and the thing that I'm most proud of is she pitched. So RTX was the thing that we used to have, which was our big convention at the convention center for fans and everything. And she pitched a Latinas in Animation panel to us. And she was a leader, but she was like, do you think we could do that? And we were like, I have no clue. But I was like, yeah, we can do that. And we had to figure out how to throw a panel, how to fly panelists out here. I mean, we had people who were like, I'm so sorry I forget her name, but she created Santiago of the Seas on Nickelodeon. We had some voice actresses from Rooster Teeth and from some movies and Netflix movies and a lot of people, Latinas that were in the animation, they were the panel, and Sage hosted it. And I remember they put us in at like 10 in the morning at a hotel that wasn't at the convention center. And I remember telling them, I was like, guys, I don't know who's going to show up, but it doesn't matter. If one kid's here, that's great. Yeah. And we had like 35, 40 people. And
oh my God.
We had a Q&A section afterwards, and like we had to stop because there was too many people asking, and we had to get out. And so I think she would always say that, but I'm also very proud of that. Like, we were able to do something really, really important, because again, inclusivity is not just what we think is important. It's what other people would bring to the table and say, I want to try this.
That's so cool. Yeah. That makes my heart really happy.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you guys hadn't been not confined by the Rooster Teeth name, is there another animal you would have chosen for your Hispanic, Latino, Gallos Unidos world?
I don't know. I feel like all the names of the BRGs were kind of like in some ways relevant to.
But if it
Rooster Teeth in it.
have to have a rooster in it,
what else would we?
Is there another?
Is there a name that I love saying in Spanish? La arañas, or like I don't just like that name. Yeah. I know spiders are, but I love the word la araña. What else?
Did you watch Madam Web?
Hey, I had a great time watching Madam Web. Personally, I thought it was a girly pop fun little time.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's probably the only thing that would guide me is like
I don't think it would have had the same impact.
But that's the only thing that would have guided me is, do I like saying this word in Spanish or something?
That's it.
Yeah, because I like right on the spot.
Like a pack animal, like something that's better together. Maybe ants, actually. Maybe ants instead.
Yeah.
Huh.
Javelinas. My parents are from Uvalde, and so we have close ties to that school and everything.
I'm so sorry.
But no. But Uvalde is their mascot is the Coyotes, and so the Lobos is a thing. So I would always like kind of as a thing as a default.
It's in Texas. That could have also worked.
Yeah, Los Lobos.
Wait, Lobos is wolf.
Oh yeah, it is wolf.
That's what the female. Well, they call the I know, but they call them the Lady Lobos over for the female teams in Uvalde.
Just okay. All right. Yeah.
I was just
So Gallos Unidos was the way. I'm glad.
It's funny. There was a razor edge where there was a razor edge where we didn't get shut down, and Gallos Unidos would have gotten folded into Warner Brothers DEI. All of us would have gotten folded into Warner Brothers DEI initiatives, which would have given us maybe some more strength in what we were able to accomplish, because both financially and with exposure. But the plan, I think, was we might have had to lose the name Gallos Unidos, and I remember that was the only thing that I was like, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, lose our identity.
Yeah, because I feel like we worked really hard.
That's so dystopian.
At least in Austin, I think we built up, and for the Rooster Teeth fans and community, I think we built up a thing where Gallos Unidos meant something. Yeah, and that's also something that I'm proud of. And like with y'all, working with y'all has been really fantastic, because we just wanted to always support y'all, but y'all are very much like always, like Gallos Unidos. So it was important to us. Like, yeah.
No. Oh, I love that. So you guys were on you guys had a big part in a very big YouTube historic moment. Do you guys watch YouTube? What do you watch?
The only thing I have to for my job.
He has to first. I mean, we watch. You watch YouTube, yeah.
What corners of YouTube right now are you guys on?
I'm on a lot of cooking videos, because I started cooking during the pandemic. He cooks a different. I feel like he smoked meats a lot more than
I smoked meats yesterday.
Yeah,
Ooh.
and I do all kinds of cooking. I love cooking, and then there's a lot of like.
Okay. I love
humor
YouTube,
that we have to like. I'll tell you, working at Rooster Teeth is a company, and it's not just an entertainment company. It's the weirdest, like in a fun way, but it's like we just have to be so in tune with a lot of things that are going on socially and commercially. So a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of like, the joke about Madam Web is funny, because we could go back and talk about like what that was like in the office, because like it's just anytime there's a big pop culture thing, it's in the office. It's also in the office, because we also do skew young with employees. Like I feel like even though I'm 40 now, I feel a lot younger, because I get to talk to people all the time that are like, this is the new trend, this is the new social thing, this is whatever. And I talk to my friends and people that are my age outside of that, and they have like, I feel like, what's going on? What's that about? Like, what's the TikTok? And so, that's where I guess we reside on YouTube.
Cooking,
and then just like, like a lot of comedy videos, creator videos.
Skateboarding for me.
Skateboarding. I like a lot of movie trailers and stuff like that. So
recently, I've been watching this guy because I love fishing. This is something I grew up in. Laura Caldas is a fishing town. Like that's what we're known from. This guy's just like, I'm gonna go to Dollar General. I'm gonna spend $100. I'm gonna survive on an island for 100 days.
What?
It's like, what is? And he's like, I built a pirate ship. I went through Lake Michigan from top to bottom. I was like, what is this man doing? And he's like, and I fish. It's like, that's how I got him. It's like, I love him. He's great.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's awesome.
He's just like,
that's what I mean. Like just weird. I love really weird.
Yeah. What are you watching?
I really like restorations. There's this guy named My Mechanics. He's the top tier. I could tier the restoration channels on YouTube.
His group tiers a bunch of the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Like his kids, like they go with, maybe it's I don't know how old you're, but it's a younger thing, but they they just tiered Disney.
Oh yeah, Sammy did every Disney Channel original musical.
Oh, the best.
Yeah, and he tiered them. He tiered them, and he explained them, and he ended
was
up.
High School Musical or Camp Rock #1?
High School Musical was, but he ended up like he had 12 outfit changes that. He lost a layer every time, and he ended up in the shorts and the jersey for the High School Musical. Yeah.
I have too many thoughts.
Yeah.
But that's valid. That's very valid. And like for people that say it's not, it is the top one. I'm sorry. It's what made Disney Channel.
I'm sorry, Lemon Mouth.
Okay, Lemonmouth is amazing. Okay, I will say also Let It Shine.
Let It Shine. One? He keeps telling me. Sammy told me if I was only going to watch one.
Oh, I've been trying to make my boyfriend watch it for years.
Yeah,
I have the entire soundtrack.
He was like,
I know
if there's only
the
one,
rap battle by heart. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
You might be a busboy, but you just got served. Come on, it's so good, too good.
Yeah.
Wow, that really got something in me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was too good. Okay, back to serious, sad representation. Okay.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But can I ask you real quick? What YouTube do you consider the thing that we were part of that was like a big historic thing?
Well, just in general, being a part of Rooster Teeth is such YouTube historic. Like, I mean, when Philip DeFranco talks about you guys, kind of, it gave very but it gave very clever news, sort of like clever.
Yeah, there was a lot of clever things
that we
did.
But without a lot of the bad, worse things about that.
Yeah. We had our moments.
But yeah, it's so the fact that you guys had that is like, and it's crazy. I don't know. I just in my head I grew up knowing my entire life about Rooster Teeth in different ways and different forms, from like Ruby to like to the YouTube stuff to like the gaming stuff, and like my boyfriend loves the Let's Plays that you guys did, and so like it's just like
shout out to the last Red versus Blue season that's coming out still.
Yeah.
Hey,
I got to do the fight choreography for the last thing. So.
That's so cool.
And then motion capture.
Cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So
being in front of you guys is like the coolest, because in my head I'm like, oh my god, like it's just like grown up in different ways. But I am curious, and I know I'm not the only one. I know there are kids listening to this that are like, how do I become you? And to that, I would want you guys to answer that, because I'm also that kid wanting to know how to become you guys. Like, is it going to school? Is it like knowing the right people? Is it like, oh, I took this chance on this creative thing?
What do you think?
For me, coming from Colombia to an American school system, where I did go to college, but I went to an accelerator program because I wanted to get out. I was like in and out. I want to get out in 2 years.
Wow.
I learned very quickly. It's like, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
Right. And I immediately started making friends at Rooster Teeth when I wanted to work here. And it was one person that I just bonded over where we went to school. I was like, hey, just give me your resume. You look like a nice person. He gave it over to the hiring manager, and then they called me, and I took it off from there. But I think it's just as hard to get in the door than it's to move up in the ladder. Ooh. And for me, learning very early on that is saying yes to a lot of things, just for exposure, and just like, hey, this might be hard, but other people have figured it out. I could figure it out, and if I can't figure it out, I'll ask and work with other people to figure it out. And then for me as well, it was understanding that like sometimes I got to take a step down or back to move forward, and that's what I did with animation. I was like, I took a step back from being a producer to be an executive assistant, but I knew that was going to get me farther and give me more exposure than if I just stuck around.
And that was important. Yeah. I think it's important for you because you were Jordan's assistant. Yeah. So going back to him as a GM, I think that was massively helpful in you being able to understand what that's like to like. I always joke with him that I'm in the production track and he's in the executive track, because he really like being in charge of a channel is a really big accomplishment. And I feel like part of that was because he had this inside communication with Jordan where he's able to probably either ask him or like just see the process of somebody who's been really successful in how they run a company. So I think that's really important too. So even though you might have seen it as a step back, when I met you when we first started Gallos Unidos, I always saw it as like that's somebody who's got their ear like where it needs to be, Yeah.
And that's how I feel about Juan, where he's like, he's an intern, but he's like, I want to learn about how to do audio. I want to learn how to run the cameras. I want to learn how to run. It's like that guy knows that he's going to end up somewhere. He wants to make sure he's ready for that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I would say, so there's a bit of that in my path. I would say persistence is a big thing. I joke about being. I basically, my job on paper at Rooster Teeth was to run the equipment room. Both.
That's cool.
So all of this, like I know all of this stuff. Like all this stuff is very familiar to me.
What's that camera?
That's a Blackmagic camera.
What's that camera?
That's a Blackmagic system. This whole thing is Blackmagic.
What is a square called?
That's just a cover box, but those are Shure SM58 mics.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they're about $400. These are about $400 pop.
You see, brought to you guys, Latinitas quality.
Yeah, no, they are quality. They're what everybody uses on, like Joe Rogan uses them on his podcast. A lot of other people use
they're
them
like,
on their
not
podcasts.
to that, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
But anyway, so like my knowledge base was that. So both at the University of Texas, because I worked there for 7 years, not just the University of Texas, but Megalo Media, the company, and then Rooster Teeth. On paper, again, my job was the equipment room, managing it, and my creative outlet, my fulfillment was doing like stunts on the side and showing up on other movies and things like that. And part of me always felt this kind of like a bit of like, well, it's not exactly what I wanted to be doing, but it's where I got my degree and everything was the equipment stuff. So but I never gave up on it because I always wanted to be in film. And I know if nothing else, creativity, the film industry, media, I could not work a normal 9 to 5 in a cubicle. And I'm no offense to anybody who can, I can't.
Yeah. And
so even if I might have felt that where I was not where I thought I wanted to be, I never gave up on working here. I never gave up on the job. And when I went to Rooster Teeth, what Santiago was saying, like I did see that there was a possibility to move around and do different things, even if the truth of the matter is you do have to work at it. You have to work hard at like changing your stripes, right? And like how you grow and how do you change but I wouldn't have been there if I had been like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I kept at it. And when presented the options to not just lead Gallos Unidos, but as a producer, I'm also a producer for a lot of different shows and live events and like our live streams. It was kind of what he was saying is like when somebody gives you an opportunity or a challenge, I did say yes. Even if like with Sage and like, how do you put a panel on? I don't know, but we figured it out, and now I know how to put a panel on.
And now that's on your resume. I put a panel on.
And so all of these things are things where persistence and saying yes, and the other part of that is like being in that department or the equipment for like almost 20 years now. There are people that I worked with at UT that were students, and now they work with me at Rooster Teeth, and like I know I have so many connections in Austin throughout the film industry. Because I just stayed the course and worked a job and that was a part of this industry, even if it maybe not was what I saw myself at. And I'm very proud of where I've been able to move and do something that's a lot more creative and end up where I am.
Yeah, no, I mean, based on my experience, all of that is very, very true. And I hope if anyone's listening, they're really, really, really taking note. Something my mom always says is that even if you don't think anyone's watching, someone is, and someone sees you saying yes and sees you doing all that stuff. So that's really good advice. I want to end it with just shout out what you guys are going to be doing now that your lives are changing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm doing that last bit of Red versus Blue comes out. That's a really cool thing to be a part of because Red versus Blue was the flagship that started
history.
Yeah, and to be able to wrap it up and do the final choreography for all the final fights and stuff, and that's really cool. Going forward, I don't know. Like we'll see what happens. I know I want to keep producing. I want to keep working in this industry. Like I said, I can't see myself anywhere else, and I want to continue in whatever way I can. I mean, I know that I'm a part of the board for the advisory council for Latinitas, but I want to keep helping grow diversity initiatives, and not just for Latinos, but like we're everybody, all the BRG leaders at Rooster Teeth help each other out, and we show up to each other's functions, and we include everybody. And so I want to keep supporting as many DEI initiatives as I can wherever I'm at.
Yeah. What about you, Santiago?
Similar vote where it's like I'm seeing, as we wrap up where things end, but, still going to try to support Best Friends Today as much as I can, see where they end up. And hey, if they still want me to manage them, I'm happy to come with. So just seeing them grow, who knows? That's going to be multi-million subscribed channel in like 2-3 years. So being there from the start is just very fulfilling.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited for you guys. And just thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking your time. It has been lovely talking to you guys.
And it's been our pleasure to work with Latinitas. Yes. If that's one thing I can say is like, going back to trying to figure out how we could be the most impactful, we looked around and we talked, and a lot of people said Latinitas was something that we should join up with. And so most of our merch sales for those first 3 years of like our jerseys and everything else went to Latinitas, and we had the opportunity every year to reassess. And I think we were both like, this is just a really worthwhile organization and nonprofit, and it really does mean a lot to us to support y'all. So just shout out to y'all, and hopefully everybody listening and whatever keeps supporting you.
Thank you guys so much. This has been like the coolest thing ever. I had so many questions, but I just talking to you guys was like, it's been super cool. Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for being here, and a big shout out to Hector and Santiago for being a part of Latinitas and for coming over and just sharing all their wisdom and their experience and being really honest about everything going on. It's super appreciated, and kind of fulfilled a little childhood dream to get to talk to them. So yeah, I hope you guys check out everything they're doing, follow them on all socials, and follow us at Latinitas, and I'll see you guys in the next Conversando. Adios.